It was a beautiful warm summer day, and Jacob set out to explore the sandy shore. He loved turning over every rock on the beach in hopes of finding treasure. He was particularly lucky that day. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video with your friends. When he spotted a shiny object, with high hopes he ran towards the mystery and quickly realized that it was a weathered bottle. But what was in the bottle and what else would Jacob experience? Jacob had spent all summer collecting treasures on the beach. He now had an entire aquarium at home filled with shells, special stones, and pieces of glass rounded by the sea. He was particularly lucky that day because the discovery that awaited him was extraordinary. As a child, you hope for treasure maps and messages in a bottle, which hopefully will find their way to you one day. Jacob's discovery was extraordinary. Jacob's heart was racing as he carefully picked up the bottle and examined it in great detail. The glass seemed old, for it was engraved with ornaments that could tell their own story. Mussels were grown at the bottom of the bottle, indicating its age. The jar was tarnished, and when Jacob held the jar up to the sun, he saw the contents make his heart beat faster. He couldn't believe it. With wide eyes, Jacob recognized a piece of paper that was folded at the bottom of the bottle. It wasn't long before Jacob had opened the bottle and was trying to get at the message with his fingers. He pulled it out carefully, trying not to tear or rest in piece the paper. His fingers trembled as he carefully held the yellow piece of paper in his hands. What would he find out? The words Jacob read slowly gave him goosebumps, and his eyes widened in disbelief. The message had been written by someone who was in trouble and wanted to share his feelings. Jacob now had tears in his eyes. He still couldn't understand the extent and impact of the news. He knew he had to tell someone what he had discovered. But who would he turn to? Overcome by a whirlwind of emotions, Jacob couldn't hold back his tears any longer. A wave of worry washed over him, and the weight of the information he had just received weighed heavily on his shoulders. His young heart felt the sadness that the person who sent the message must have felt as well. He couldn't express his emotions, and his sobs echoed up and down the beach. His first thought was to run home to tell his parents about it, but that seemed way too far. It was the first year that he was allowed to go to the beach alone, without supervision, and he certainly didn't want to give up this freedom. It had taken a long time for his parents to realize that Jacob was self-sufficient and responsible enough to go on independent small trips in their small village. So who would Jacob turn to for help? Bottle firmly in hand, he stumbled along the beach, his face that had recently been full of life and color now pale. The world around him now seemed just a background. The message had come to the fore, around which his thoughts now revolved. In many years, he would think back to this moment, hopefully knowing that he had resolved the situation conscientiously and well. Concern and confusion mixed in Jacob's mind as he tried to make the best decision and plan his next steps. His eyes, still filled with tears, saw a blurry police station. With a glimmer of hope in his chest, he stumbled toward the station, his short legs carrying him as fast as he could. His childish desperation gave him enough strength, and he made it to the front door. Breathless and disoriented, Jacob opened the doors of the police station with full force. His tear-stained face immediately drew everyone's attention, and before long he was surrounded by several employees anxiously trying to follow his words. Now it was time to tell everything and to find his voice again. Jacob squeezed both the bottle and the message into the hands of a police officer, and in a trembling voice, he relayed the discovery he had made on the beach. The police officers proceeded cautiously and took a closer look at the bottle and the message that had been inside. Her facial expression changed and now resembled Jacob's, whose tears had finally stopped. It only took the police a moment to realize it was time to act. They understood the gravity of the situation and were ready to help. The boy's mystery would be solved. News of Jacob's discovery spread through the community like wildfire, and all attention was focused on him. Strangers came to offer Jacob their help and support. It was amazing. The police set about following up every detail in the message to get to the bottom of the matter. What felt like moments was approaching 2 weeks, and without a break, every stone was being turned. The joint efforts of the whole village and the police paid off, because slowly the truth seemed to be coming out. It was a tragic fate of separation. The message was written by a desperate soul stranded in a land far away, hoping one day to be reunited with her love. The bottle had served as a glimmer of hope, for perhaps one day the sea would permit the connection. This truth was shattering and weighed heavily on Jacob's heart despite the support he received from the entire community. He was still young, and his hopes were deep. He wouldn't give up that easily. The empathy that the police showed him spurred him on to search further and bring the two suffering souls together. Would this story have a happy ending after all, or would it end heartbroken? To reach more people, Jacob had contacted the newspaper with his parents. Maybe someone knew something that could identify the two people for him. Jacob wouldn't give up that easily, and it wasn't long before every thought revolved around the topic. Jacob had imagined the two people in love. They became friends he had never met. Unfortunately, the newspaper was not helpful either. It wasn't long before a local news station asked for an interview that would be shown on TV. Jacob was very excited and prepared with his parents for any questions he might be asked. Jacob was allowed to tell the story that happened to him and how it made him feel. An image of the message appeared. Perhaps someone recognized the writing of the squiggly lines. During those weeks, Jacob received a number of calls from strangers who wanted to share words of support. However, no one had any idea of the message and who might have written it. Jacob was sad, but he had to face reality. Possibly the two people in love had died long before Jacob discovered the bottle. Although he was very young, he was familiar with the concept of time and age. Every night before Jacob went to bed, Jacob made up a story with his parents that involved the message in a bottle couple. They invented the wildest love stories, and Jacob came up with reasons why they couldn't be together. So he processed the story as he had experienced it, and what had once been a sad message in a bottle was now a romantic secret that he was able to combine with many wonderful stories. This accompanied him throughout his life. Years passed, and the memories of that fateful day quietly faded as Jacob grew and new things became important to him. He'd always carried with him the memory of the empathy he had received at the time and valued connections with other people. Jacob made it his duty to listen to other people and always act kindly. He had learned that from the message and from his congregation. The strange bottle he once discovered became a symbol of perseverance, reminding Jacob that if he believed in something, he should never give up. Even if the mystery hasn't been solved, he had turned his sorrow into love, and every time he remembered the bottle, a feeling of warmth overcame him. His discovery had changed his life at a young age, and he had realized what many people only realize much too late.